dear students, I hope all of you are doing good. Welcome to Social Science class. Today we will be talking about our first unit in the history, that is Introducing History. Under this chapter we will be studying about the study of history, prehistory, proto-history and history, sources of history, that is archaeological sources and literary sources, and lastly we will be studying about time frame and geographical framework. Okay, now before we go into the chapter, I'll give you one situation. I hope that all of you would read newspapers daily, or at least some whenever you get time. So while reading newspapers or scrolling through any news feed, you would have seen a question tag such as 50 years ago, 100 years ago, isn't it? We would have noticed it. So how do we get information about what happened 50 years ago, what happened 100 years ago? Yes, to understand that we need to study history. Likewise, if you want to know what happened yesterday, what will be your source? You will ask your parents, you will watch news, you will read newspapers, and we will get to know what happened yesterday. In the same way, what do you think would happen a year ago? How will you get information? Yes, a year ago, if you want to know what happened, you might ask your friend circle, you might ask your neighboring people, you might ask your parents, isn't it? Yes. In the same way, if we want to know about what happened 100 years ago or 1000 years ago, we must know the concept of history. So, as an activity, I want you all to draw a family tree mentioning your birthplace, your parents' birthplace, grandparents or great-grandparents, and also mention if your grandparents or great-grandparents participated in any political or social events. So this is your activity. Now we will look into the study of history. Why we should study history? Everyone will get that question in your mind, right? Why we are studying history? Why should we know about the past king or kingdoms? Why do we know? We need to know. So it's nothing but history is knowing about the past and also about the present. In history, we do not only study about the great rulers or the great dynasties which was existed, but also we will learn about the cultural life of people, what clothes they wore, what were the beliefs or practices that they were following in the past, and also history talks about the past settlements, economy and society. So for this reason, we should study the concept of history. Okay, now we will look into the history, which is divided into three periods. Firstly, we have the prehistory period, secondly proto-history, and thirdly history. These are the three periods in which history is divided. Now coming to what is prehistory. Prehistory is a period for which we do not have written records. Here we totally rely on the archaeological sources for any valuable information. What is an archaeology? Well, archaeology is the study of remains using where the archaeologist will excavate the bodies of the remains where they will create, modify and make use of the valuable sources for the studying of history. So this is the meaning of prehistory and archaeology. Now coming back to what is proto-history. Proto-history is the period between prehistory and the beginning of history. Here we will find very few written records, but these few written records are yet to be deciphered. Means converting into normal language. So here we have very few written records, and these written records are yet to be converted into normal language. So this is about proto-history. Now coming back to history. A live example for you is, if you want to know like what happened when you were small in your childhood, if you want to know what happened, how you used to be with your parents, with your friends, with your relatives, what will you do? Yes, you will ask the pictures from your parents, you will ask your grandparents to tell stories about what you did in your childhood, isn't it? Yes, in the same way, history is the systematic record of the past events. There is a systematic records in terms of rocks, caves, forts, palaces, etc. So, in general term, you will say history is the systematic record of the past events. As an activity, I want you to gather more information about prehistory and proto-history. Okay, now we will look into the most important concept, that is sources of history. What is a source? Source is a basic material necessary for the construction of history. Students, without a proper source or without a proper evidence, we cannot say that this thing happened in the past or this happened in the present. So because of that, we need a proper source. Under the sources of history, history is divided into two sources, that is archaeological sources and literary sources. Now we will discuss about each source in detail. Firstly, we will look into the archaeological sources. As discussed in the beginning, archaeology is the study of human past. Archaeologists explore, excavate and study the human past. Archaeologists includes the following. Firstly, we have the fossil remains, which are basically the imprints of plants, animals and human, which is being preserved in rocks for billions of years ago. Secondly, we have monuments. Monuments are ancient buildings such as palaces, tombs, mosques, forts, etc. Thirdly, we have artifacts. Artifacts are human-made objects such as tools, ornaments, pottery, etc. They throw light on the people who lived during the past. Next, we have inscriptions. Inscriptions are written on engraved stones in terms of pillars, caves and different temples. So these inscriptions are engraved written records of the past. And lastly, we have coins. Coins tells us about the economic condition of a particular ruler or a dynasty. It throws light on the economic condition of a particular kingdom. So these are the sources under archaeological sources, such as fossil remains, monuments, artifacts, inscriptions and coins. Okay students, now we will talk about the literary sources. Literary sources are the written records of the past. They give us an essence of what happened in the form of written records. Under literary sources, manuscript, language, religious and non-religious literature throw light on the literary sources. Firstly, we have manuscripts. Manuscripts are the written records of the past which has been written on palm leaves or bark of the birch tree. So this is about manuscript. Secondly, we have language. Language of ancient literature depends upon a particular region of a written record. Some of the languages of the past were Prakrit, Pali, Sanskrit and Tamil. Ramayana and Mahabharata was written in Sanskrit, whereas Silapadikaram and Manimegalai was written in Tamil. So this is about the language. Next we have religious and non-religious literature. Religious literature are those which contains the religious practices of the ancient past, such as Vedas and Puranas, which talks about the sacred or religious literary sources. Secondly, we have non-religious literature. Non-religious literature contains the accounts of the foreign travelers or autobiographies of certain rulers in the dynasty, which gives a detailed information about political, social and economic life of a certain period. So this is about the literary sources. So under literary sources we have manuscripts, language, religious and non-religious literature. Now we will look into the concept time frame. What is this time frame? Time frame is a long list of movement which gives us access to the information of what and when the events or moments have occurred in the past. They are classified into two, that is BCE and CE. BCE stands for before Common Era and CE stands for Common Era. So as an activity, I want you all to make a flowchart of the topic, the sources of history. Now we will look into the geographical framework. In history, we read about the agricultural methods, what people used to wear, what kind of food they used to eat, soil type, rainfall, environment, etc., which are dependent on the geographical climate of an area. So students, for today's class, we have learnt about the first unit, that is introducing history, Under this, we have learnt about the study of history, the history divided into three, that is prehistory, protohistory and history. Sources of history, which is broadly divided into two, that is archaeological sources and literary sources, and the other concepts such as time frame and geographical framework. That's it for today, students. I hope you all will do the activity. Have a great day. Thank you.